Slide 1. Good morning. The research paper I will be presenting was co-written with Associates Professor Frederick Boughton for the APAC-CRE conference, held in May of this year at Taylor's University. The research is entitled, Congruent Spaces Indexing Spatial Infusions for Urban Destination Resilience. Spatial infusions are a co-created condition, the result of visitor-destination interactions. Nevertheless, spatial infusions provide just the starting conditions for destination resilience. Destinations that are resilient are infused spaces with the character of congruence. Hence our consideration congruent spaces in this research. What exactly do we mean by congruent spaces? We argue that congruent spaces are characterized by a high degree of space-time accessibility. Hence in the indexing of spatial infusion we are measuring the degree of space-time accessibility needed for destination resilience. Slide 2. In this presentation I shall focus on the two main components. The research, the conceptual aspect of this presentation deals with conceptual roots and definitions related to spatial infusion, congruent spaces and destination resilience. A conceptual framework is proposed that is derived from economic geography, economic sociology, geophilosophy and tourist geography. The operational aspect of the research deals with the construction of a composite index for spatial infusion that serves as a rule-based guide for destination resilience at the various scales of a destination. Our choice of rules are informed by computer simulations of destination complexity. Destination complexity is a composite of spatial density and diversity. Slide 3. The span of spatial infusion ranges from the level of the individuals, to the level of destinations and ultimately, global regions. This conceptualization considers three structural orders: micro, meso and macro. The relevant conceptual domains as we move through these three orders are, economic sociology for the micro-individual scale, tourist geography and geophilosophy for the meso-destination scale, and economic geography for the macro-regional scale. Consistent with the micro-individual scale for spatial infusions, we adopt the paradigm of tourist-resident solidarity, investigating how it builds social capital at the destination. The level of tourist-resident solidarity is a proxy for local global tensions at tourist destinations. From an operational and methodological perspective, the parameter in the simulation model is a composite index for spatial elements of accessibility. In the context of tourism, one can think of it as a parameter for tourism typology. The higher the value of A, the greater the diversity in tourists and tourism at a destination. The parameter G in the simulation model is a composite index for temporal elements of accessibility. In the context of tourism, one can think of it as a parameter for resident homogeneity. The higher the value of G, the greater the degree of homogeneity. The mix of O and G values provide a rule-based index of destination resilience at the micro level of tourist-resident solidarity. Consistent with the meso-destination scale for spatial infusions, we adopt the paradigm of space-time fit, investigating how space-time fit affects the evolution of destination networks. The level of space-time fit is a proxy for destination travel network connectivity. The higher the value of A, the higher the degree of spatial diversity within the destination travel network. The higher the value of G, the higher the degree of density within the destination travel network. The mix of O and G values provide a rule-based index of destination resilience at the meso level of space-time fit. Consistent with the macro-regional scale for spatial infusions, we adopt the paradigm of agglomeration economies, investigating how agglomeration economies concentrate and channel economic benefits coming from urban tourism. The level of agglomeration economies is a proxy for creativity and innovation in urban tourism. The higher the value of A, the greater the depth of human capital in urban regions. The higher the value of G, the greater the population density in urban regions. The mix of O and G values provide a rule-based index of destination resilience at the macro level of agglomerative economies. Slide 4. What then is the ideal degree of space-time accessibility? How can we provide yardsticks to guide tourism practitioners and researchers so that the goal of destination resilience can be achieved? While scarcity used to be the prime concern of economics, information abundance seems to be the scourge of our times. Turning our attention to the information overload. Within the constraints of time and space, a large amount of information needs to be processed in order to arrive at the best choices. Tourists are also bombarded with information flooding through their senses. Most experiences at destinations are meaningless, stream of consciousness experiences. Destination resilience can only be attained if we make every instance of their experience a memorable one while maximizing mobility between sites of interests. Faced with a global market for tourism, destination marketers have further compounded the problem by providing more than enough information rather than more pertinent information. And the destination has been repackaged over and over again with different themes and slogans. We hypothesize that information overload is associated with two extreme scenarios that need to be avoided, and a halfway point chosen to maximize space-time accessibility and in turn galvanize destination resilience. The first extreme scenario is one that concerns the time budget. Most of us have encountered times when we have had too much to experience and too little time to savor and make sense out of it. This is the problem of maximizing our time budget during vacations given an almost unlimited range of spaces to explore. The second extreme scenario is one that concerns the bundles of spaces. Limited mobility arising probably from travel risks will lead to virtual trips taken within the confines of their home or workspaces. Some have referred to this as a staycation or mind trips. Maximizing the space-time accessibility at destination is about the right mix of mobility that results in the most memorable of experiences, and our research discusses an index that would assist policymakers in their search for the sweet spot and in communicating the efficacy of their tourism policies. Slide 5. In our efforts to build an index of spatial infusions that accesses the level of space-time accessibility, we have attempted to grow an artificial destination that is generated from recursive simple rules over a number of iterations. As the generative process runs through a number of iteration, patterns of spatial complexity begin to emerge. This kind of model is what is known as a cellular automata in the literature. While there are potentially limitless possibilities for spatial complexity given the simple rules of the simulation, there are only a few cases in which the virtual destination's spatial complexity will result in resilience. We isolate cases of destination resilience by considering the degree of spatial density and diversity in the simulations. The range of colors in the simulation can be used to designate different tourism categories, and hence the spatial diversity, while emergent spatial configurations in terms of the geometries of the spatial aptons can be used to infer on the spatial densities at destinations. And because the parameters of the simulation A and G have been operationalized as proxies for space-time accessibility, we can specify the rules of destination resilience and form an index of spatial infusion out of these parameters. The slide shows the result when A equals G equals 6. Eyeballing of the spatial patterns roughly indicates to us that during T equals 10 and 15, the emergent patterns begin to display distinct clustering. The epochs prior to T equals 10 tend to be distinct from those post T equals 15. Complexity theorist will therefore identify the epoch T equals 10 to T equals 15 as the edge of chaos, a transitory phase or the optimizing point for destination resilience, much like turning points, saddle points, and extremes in calculus. Referring to the numerical measures, on the upper right corner of the slide, clustering is maximized at T equals 10 and polarization of the spatial structure occurs at around T equals 15. The bottom right corner reports the numerical measures for spatial diversity. At t equals 10 the diversification of tourists follows the bell curve of the psychographic continuum discussed by Plog 1973 and 2001. At around t equals 15 this continuum of visitor categories begin to look like a binary classification of tourists. As the continuum starts to be skewed towards extreme poles, the visualizations and the numerical measures leads us to conclude that the destination is likely to be resilient at a time somewhere between t equals 10 and t equals 15 in its evolutionary trajectory. Slide 6. We have considered how indices of space-time accessibility can be specified in terms of O and G. Leaving the theoretical aspects of our research, we want to consider the application of this knowledge to the planning and management of destinations so as to enhance destination resilience. Given different proportions of O and G, a matrix of attraction categories can be mapped out. Landmarks are easily accessible with not much to be done in terms of creativity and with more emphasis on conservation. Malling is a stream of consciousness kind of experience akin to window shopping, where creativity is vital and conservation and intervention should be kept to the minimum. Out of this matrix, two potential spatial infusions arise, one related to public spaces and another related to the notion of third places. By definition, public spaces are many things to many people. They are also contained very little in terms of interest to tourists because spatially elements resemble that of the mundane. That is why in our simulation A equals G will not automatically result in the spatial complexity that gives rise to destination resilience. In fact, the kind of spatial infusions produced may be likened to public spaces. It is only when we begin to discern the patterns through spatial density and diversity that we can begin to pick out the kind of spatial infusions and spatial complexity that may resemble what marketers and sociologists have termed third places, a combination of space for work and play. And this provides a glimpse into what a resilient destination should look and feel. Slide 7. In future, the research will focus on specifying and contextualizing for resilient destinations what third places are.